first through his book called Stuck, subtitled How to Move On from Broken Relationships, how to navigate issues of frustration, of anger, to true forgiveness. And so it's a pleasure to introduce Remy as our speaker today.
Impressive, so that's great. I want to talk to you guys about something we can all relate to, and that is 5 things that tick you off. And someone said, well, Remy, there's a lot more things than 5 things that tick me off. And I go, yes, I realize that, but I've only got 30 minutes, so I have to be realistic, and I'm just picking 5. In my book, I talked about 7, but yeah, there's lots of things that tick us off. I was reading, as I prepared this talk, I've given this talk a couple times, and as I was preparing this talk, last year, I read an article. I was reading about workplace anger. And it was pretty shocking, actually. It said this. It says, anger and violent conflicts in the workplace has become one of corporate America's biggest problems. It says in a recent Gallup poll, 2 out of every 10 employees confess to being angry enough to hurt some coworker in the last 6 months. 2 out of 10. Now we've got to pause here, do a little math. 2 out of 10, that's the same as 1 out of 5. Okay, look around the table. If you're not the one, that means there's 4 guys at your table that might want to hurt you if you do the wrong thing. Just saying, be nice to them, share. It gets worse. I'm going to keep reading here. It says, indeed, every day, literally thousands of employees are killing and maintaining. Oh, I forgot I should be. All right. Indeed, every day, literally thousands of employees are killing and maiming each other as a result of their mismanaged and uncontrolled anger and rage. And I just go, wow, it makes you wonder where they're getting this research. I would not be aware of this. This is very serious stuff. Makes your office look pretty good, I would imagine, when you hear this kind of stuff. It keeps going here. It says many more thousands of innocent bystanders / co-workers are also being hurt or killed in the process. And it says, too many managers and bosses are losing their lives each year because of the angry and violent actions of disgruntled employees. Make no mistake about it, the modern workplace of today is dangerous and becoming increasingly more violent, and you can easily be hurt or even lose your life if you don't know how to manage your anger and the anger of your coworkers. Well, if this doesn't get your attention, I don't know what will. This made me kind of sit up and become aware of a problem that I didn't even know was out there. I mean, I work in a church, and there's not I don't see a whole lot of this in my church staff, thankfully, but it's out there in the community. So, you might want to share this with your boss. So the truth is, in the workplace, we really do tick each other off. And I'm sure had you stop and share a little bit about who ticks you off at your job, you go, oh, I've got a few stories to tell, right? We've all got a few stories to tell. It's easy to laugh about this stuff, but it's very serious, and a lot of times we laugh about it just because it covers up so much of the hurt and the frustration that we're all experiencing in our work or even our home situations. Patrick Lencioni is a business consultant, and Patrick says, he says this about workplace anger. He says, we may not like to admit it, but it's there. It makes us not want to show up at work. It makes us go home angry and bring that anger into our families and friendships and organizations. It adds stress and reduces our productivity. We roll our eyes at the drama in our teenagers' lives, but we often have just as much drama in the office place. So it's a vicious cycle. I think we've been there. You go to work and you get ticked off at work by your boss or your coworkers for one reason or another. You come home and you unleash it on your family. They think it's unfair. They push back at you with their own anger. Now you've got more stress. You go into work the next day with your stress, and it goes sideways to hit other people, and it's just this vicious cycle. It goes around and around, and sometimes you really have to step back and say, hey, let's stop the madness. Let's speak some truth and some wisdom into this situation, because this just can't keep going on forever. And that's why I'm here today. That's what I want to talk about. I want to give you some things that I think will help you decompress your own workplace anger as well as your own place anger. And I am going to tell you about 5 things that tick us off. But before I get there, I just want to teach us a little bit about anger itself, okay? Anger is an emotion that arises out of any kind of loss that you experience. So let me walk you through this and just help you see what this is. So anger starts with expectations. You've got expectations in your life. We've all got expectations. You had expectations today what the food would be like. You had expectations of what the weather would be like. You've got expectations for your wife or your kids. You've got expectations for your boss, your job. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of expectations in life. But our expectations, where do they often land? Our reality doesn't always measure up to our expectations, right? It just doesn't. The weather's not as nice. That is definitely for sure. The weather is not as nice as we expect. There's lots of things that aren't as what we wanted it to be. It falls short, and so that's a loss. Okay? So whenever you have loss, the natural thing that you experience is anger. It's a natural emotion. That's not good or bad. It just is. And I think a lot of times we demonize anger, like, oh, it's really bad. Let's not talk about it. Let's not go there. But hey, we all have it. We all deal with it. We just don't always like to talk about it. So, with our anger, we can do two things. We can be constructive, which most of us don't even think that you can be constructive with your anger, but you can. Or we can be destructive. That's kind of our default. When we are angry, we default to being destructive, and we are destructive in two simple ways. Either we're silent, we withdraw, we go to, we get mad at our wife, we go into our garage, and we work in the car, or we fix something, we go in the basement, or we become violent, with two eyes there, sorry about that. We become violent, not necessarily like we're throwing things or hitting, but we become aggressive. We lash out with our words, and we become oppressive and dominating and things like that. So, the thing I want you to see here, though, something that people don't always know about or think about with their anger, is that there's two kinds of loss. There's two kinds of loss. There's what I call a primary loss, and then there's a secondary loss. Primary loss, let me just help you with this. How about something really simple? Anyone here ever lose your car keys? Okay, the rest of you are lying. I lose my car keys all the time, and it's so simple because when you walk into our house, we have a kind of an entryway, and my wife helps me to organize my life, and so she's put a table there, and I can just drop everything, like my car keys and my glasses and important things right there. But of course, I don't put them there because I'm usually carrying something, and I take my keys with me, and I put down my briefcase or food in the kitchen. And then if I'm in the kitchen, I'll put down the car keys that usually get pushed behind the toaster. And so when I'm going to work the next day, they're not there, right? And in Menomonie, so I live in Menomonie, and it takes 6 minutes to get anywhere, any place in Menomonie. So I cut it close. I usually leave 7 minutes, in advance. And so when I go to that little table that's supposed to have my car keys and my glasses and everything, I'd say, 20% of the time my car keys are not there. And so what do? I get mad. And I'll tear around the house, I'll look behind the toaster, I'll look in all the different places. It's usually in my pocket, but I'll look all around the house, and if I only have 60 seconds of margin. And so it doesn't take very long to use up my margin. And once I use up that margin, I start to get pretty mad. And one time I stopped myself, and it's probably after I remembered, or I found my keys and I was on my way to work, and I thought about, Remy, well, these are car keys. Why are you so mad about car keys? And you didn't actually lose them because your car is here. That means your car keys are somewhere in the general vicinity. So why are you so mad? And I thought about that, and I thought, it's not the car keys. It's all what I call the secondary losses, right? And so what the expectation is that my car keys are by the door. The reality is I have no idea. That's a loss. So let me go here. So let me talk about some of the losses. What I realized once I got to thinking about this, what's really bothering me is that I'm losing time. Every time that clock ticks, the second goes by, I'm losing time. And you go, okay, that's not too big of a loss, but think about what happens when you lose time. Other things happen. Might lose good parking. I have to walk a little bit farther. Now I'm losing more time. Right now we have to walk through snow. But when I walk in, it gets a little more serious because I walk into work late. Let's say this is on a consistent basis. I might start losing respect, all right? If I keep being late, that might actually cause me to lose money. One, because let's say if I'm punching in, if I punch in, I might get docked. I haven't punched in that clock for a long time, but back in the day, if you punched in late, I remember you got docked in your pay, so I might lose some money. And if we do it enough, I might actually even lose my job, right? So that's the problem. So really, the reason I'm getting so mad about my car keys isn't because of the car keys. I'm not really mad about the car keys. What I'm mad at are all these secondary losses. And once I understood that, I thought, that really helps. That helps me to understand what it is that's really got me concerned about my life. So, what I want you to understand is when you get angry about something, be careful what you're getting mad at. Because what we tend to do is just yell at the car keys. Those stupid car keys. It's not the stupid car keys. It's you getting upset about your loss of control, the loss of time, the loss of respect, all these secondary losses that are taking place in your life. It's my loss of the control and the respect that results from these car keys that gets me so mad. Okay, well, with that bit of wisdom in mind, now let me finally get to the 5 things that tick us off. Because I want you to understand what these 5 things are to give you a little more insight. And these things are universal. These are, it's not like, well, some of these are going to affect some of you and some not. No, these are 5 things that will affect everyone here, myself included. So let me give you these 5 things. First thing that ticks us off is invalidation. To invalidate someone means to insult them, to put them down, to disrespect them. I put Simon Cowell up there because he's a master at this, right? I mean, he became famous in the United States for doing this on American Idol. And there's a gospel singer now, her name is Mandisa, and she was on American Idol. I remember the show, and she was very overweight. But he was not quiet about it, and he said of her on air, he said, oh, we're going to have to get a bigger stage if you're going to stick around. You can imagine that? I mean, that would be insulting if he said that to her one-on-one off stage. He said that on national television. And so it's surprising that the woman didn't just go home and quit. But that's what it means to be invalidated. And you can be invalidated, so that's a very obvious, significant way to be invalidated. But it happens in subtle ways, too. Think of this. Have you ever walked into your kitchen at home and it was a mess? There's crumbs all over, and the milk carton was out, and things weren't put away. You're not just mad at the mess, and you're not just mad at the person who left the mess. The reason that we often get mad about that is you feel disrespected. Like, hey, do you think you're the only one who lives in this house? Why would you leave that for me when you knew very well that I was going to be the next guy into the kitchen within a half hour? So that's an invalidation as well. So what are the things that cause, what are the secondary losses that come? Well, there's some things. Obviously, respect. I said invalidation is disrespect, so it's a loss of respect, and it's also a loss of control. Mandisa had no control over the microphone when Simon Cowell was talking about, him or them needing a bigger stage for her. So you have loss of respect and you have loss of control. Second thing that ticks you off is irritating behavior. Now this might be what you think of when you think of irritating behavior. When you think of 5 things that tick you off, you might think of automatically of irritating behavior. It's the little things in life that people do. Then they're not even necessarily wrong. They're not necessarily bad. They just annoy the heck out of you. For example, I remembered a woman at her church, this was years ago, but every week she would ask me the same question about where something was. And like every week, for week after week after week. And at first I was like Mr. Calm and nice and happy to answer the same question the same way. But after a while, I didn't say this to her, but I wanted to say, it's the same thing that was last week, and the week before that, and the week before that, and you know what? It's going to be the same thing next week, and the week after that. And she just annoyed me. Now I'm a pastor. I didn't say that. I was nice and kind, and I kept answering the same question, but inside, that was the little conversation. Now you know how pastors really think. No? Or how about the person who comes to you on Monday morning and launches into this long monologue of what they've done all weekend long, detail after detail. They probably just don't want to get to work. And so they have to tell you all the drama of the weekend. It's like, I don't care. I really don't. I just want to do my job. But of course, you're too nice. You're not going to say that. But it makes you mad. I asked my friend once before I did the first talk a year ago, I said, so what makes you mad? At work, I was specifically asking him about work, and he said, the lady next to me clips her fingernails in the cube next door. Like clip, clip, clip. He said she was doing it this week, and I even emailed my wife. It got me so mad. I said, she's doing it again. Clip, clip, clip. I I said, you should just be glad it was her fingernails, not her toenails. That would really be gross. You know what research says is the biggest irritation that we have of all the irritations? People shirking their work. People not doing their job. That's what really irritates us the most. The person that always has an excuse for why they came late, why they had to come late, why the break had to be long, why they have to leave early, or why they never seem to get their job done, and oh, by the way, you've got to do it because I need to leave right now. So what are the losses that come with irritating behavior? Secondary losses are things, again, respect. You feel like people aren't respecting you by irritating you so much. You can't control them. They're always getting into your space there, like the picture of that woman in her little bubble there, and the loss of peace. Third thing that ticks us off is when someone exposes our weaknesses. If you try to slip into a meeting like this late, and you don't want anyone to know that you're late, and so you carefully open the door and carefully close it, and just as you're tiptoeing in, the speaker says, "Oh, Bob, by the way, since you're the last one in, could you shut the door?" You're not so happy with the speaker, You're not so happy. You exposed a weakness, right? And that makes you mad. A little thing, but it's enough to make you mad. Or how about ever go to an office or a company golf outing, and you're one of the first foursomes to go off, and everyone's standing around and yucking up, and you tee off, and you're going to hit the big one, and it goes all the way to the woman's tee, and it's like, And there you're just mad at yourself. I mean, because you are the one who exposed your own weakness, so that's upsetting. I've got a friend at church. I was speaking on this a year ago in church about anger and exposed weaknesses. He says, he's admittedly overweight. He's a pretty hefty guy. And he said, Remy, and he's also a funny guy, jokester kind of guy. He says, you wouldn't believe how often people are sarcastic. He says, I don't know if a day goes by when someone isn't sarcastic to me about my weight. And I laugh it off, but inside, I'm angry about it. It just gets old to have someone always teasing me about my weight, exposing his weakness. Or I read about an ad executive, a woman who was very successful in her line of work. And her boss literally had two boards outside of his office. One said winners and one said losers. And you got on the loser board if you had a bad month in sales. And she was always on the winner board, so she never thought much of it. She always liked being on the winner board until one day she lost a big account. And sure enough, as soon as she lost that account, her name was transferred to the loser board. And she said, I had no idea the impact to see my name on the loser board for the whole office to see. That made me so mad. I couldn't live with it. It devastated me, and she had to quit the company and get another job. So when your weaknesses are hung out to dry in front of the world, that's something that's going to make you mad. And so what are the secondary losses that go along with that? Again, respect. You feel like people aren't going to respect you because of your weaknesses. You can't control people from exposing your weaknesses. Things like trust. You lose trust in the person who exposed your weakness, and you might lose the relationship over for that matter. Number fourth thing that ticks you off is limited choices. Limited choices. In other words, someone puts you in a position where you have fewer options, and that complicates your life. It's kind of like if you're playing cards and they only deal you half a hand. You've got to play the game with only half a hand, and you've been limited in your choices, and that makes you mad. Or you have to do the same job as everyone else, but only you have to do it with one hand tied behind the back, your back. That you're at a huge disadvantage, and you feel that way. But again, I'm mentioning some small ways that we get mad because I want you to realize, just understand why you get mad. So, for example, one way that people limit your choices, it might be like at a restaurant. Ever go to a restaurant where they're out of a lot of things? I was out at a restaurant not too long ago, and they were describing their special of the day. It was like, I love fresh fish. It was fresh fish, and it was in a special sauce, and I'm kind of a foodie, so I was getting all excited about this. I've got to comb the whole menu before I make the decision. It's got to be the right decision. And so I finally decided on the special. I said, I'm going to have that fresh fish, and she said, okay. And of course, they don't come back right away to tell you that they're out, but she waited 15 minutes, and then she said, oh, by the way, someone got their order in right ahead of me and got the last one, so you don't get it. So I was like, okay. I'm pretty cool about that. Just if she gave me the menu, and I had to look it all over and choose again for the second perfect thing, and I finally gave it to her, and she said, oh, we don't offer that anymore. It's like, lady, it's on the menu. I mean, I understand the special, it's a special, and you run out of that, but this was on the menu, and you tell me it's not even served anymore? It's like, yeah, we haven't bothered to take it off the menu. But I'm a pastor, so I'm really nice, and I'm really cool, and I just let that go, right? But it's those little things, right? Or again, at home, you know, if you, again, you can see I get frustrated in my kitchen, but if you go into the kitchen, and someone just left a little bit of orange juice, like enough for like an ounce, in the refrigerator. And it's like, how hard is it to make another thing of orange juice? But no, now you're limited. You know, I wanted to have you got a limited amount of time. And you got it all planned out. You're going to have the orange juice and the bacon and the eggs, and the orange juice, you don't have time to make it now, so that got limited. And the eggs, you go in for the egg carton, and it's empty. Hello, who put an empty egg carton in my refrigerator? And so now you just leave, you know, eating crackers for breakfast, and that makes you mad. Some of your parents, just to help maybe understand your kids a little bit, just to flip this around, not what makes you mad, but what makes other people mad. If some of you guys might have younger children, have you ever sent your kids down into the candy aisle and say, hey, go get a candy bar? And they're like, oh, great, I get to choose my own candy bar. And of course, there's like 200 candy bars there. So they just sit there in paralysis because they don't know what to pick. And so they're sitting there for 20 minutes, and you think they're lost, but they're still standing there. And finally, you come out of frustration, and you just say, hey, here, pick one. And you just grab one, and you give it to, here's a Kit Kat bar, let's go. And now they're all mad at you. Right? Why? Because you just limited their choices. They had 200 choices to pick from, and now you just gave them one choice. And so what do you say to them? You should be happy I gave you that candy bar. Right? But what you don't understand is that you limited 199 options from their choosing. And that's why they're mad. So you have to give them a little bit of credit. You have to go, I realize I limited your options, but you were taking so long, you're limiting my options. I had you had to go. No, don't say it that way. But. So what are the losses? Again, control. You see these keep coming up. Control. When people limit your choices, you have no control over it. It makes you mad. You feel like you're being disrespected. Makes you mad. And also an opportunity. You have not as many opportunities now that your choices are limited. Last thing here. Number 5. Fifth thing that ticks you off is unmet needs. Unmet needs is simply just what it says when you ask someone to help you and they don't. So let's say that you catch me in the parking lot today, and for whatever reason you thought you had a ride and you don't, and you see me getting in the car, and you know that, let's say you work downtown, and you know that I'm going to drive right through downtown, and you say, hey Remy, can I catch a ride with you to downtown? I go, no. You go, oh, you're not going that way? I go, no, I'm going downtown. It's like, well, were you going to take other people? No, I wasn't going to take other people. Well, why can't you take me? I just don't want to. Right? Unmet need. I mean, just bold-faced, I just look you right in the eyes. I don't want to help you. And that may sound funny, but we're in situations like that when people don't want to help us, and it makes us mad. So what are the losses? Well, again, respect. What am I, chopped liver that you won't take me downtown? Control. I can't make you give me the ride, or you can't make me give you the ride. And empathy. All right. Well, I point these 5 things out because when you understand the secondary losses, you're going to put your attention on the thing that's really making you mad. What dawned on me when I was working through this whole thing between primary and secondary losses, I realized that only about 20% of my anger really comes from the primary loss, from the car keys. 80% of my anger, and this isn't scientific, I'm just picking those numbers out of the sky, but seems right, okay? Seems right that I think 80% of my anger is all about my loss of control, or my loss of respect, or these other things that I've talked about. I don't have any control over the car keys, or maybe what my wife does, or what my kids do, but I have all kinds of control over me, over how I respond to those losses. And that's what I want you to see. Let me tell you a personal story, just as I wind things down today, to help you understand, and maybe you'll be able to see yourself in my life a little bit. I moved to Wisconsin back in 1990, and we came from the Twin Cities. My wife and I bought a farm with 2 other families. And we thought buying a dairy farm in Wisconsin was a really smart thing to do. Because dairy farmers make so much money. How many dairy farmers? Any dairy farmers? You won't admit it. But anyways, it was not a very smart thing to do. Let's put it at that. We lost thousands and thousands of dollars. It was not this idyllic, romantic little thing. It was pretty, but everything else was not pretty, okay? So my wife and I, and 3 kids, we lived in a mobile home. So it was 3 families, so one family moved into the farmhouse, but we needed 2 other homes, so we moved on 2 mobile homes. We lived in one of the mobile homes, and as we thought we were only going to live there 1 year, and then we were going to move a home on because we're going to be making so much money, we'd have money to do that. We never moved out of the mobile home until we eventually moved off of the farm. And as our kids got bigger, you know, if you live in a mobile home or do live in a mobile home, the mobile home gets much smaller as your kids get bigger. Very tight space. So one evening I was coming home from milking the cows, and I was walking down the driveway to our home, and there was toys all over the yard, and I could tell that the kids were in for the night. So I went in the house and I said, "Hey kids, get up there. Are you done for the night?" They said, "Yeah, we're done." "Well, get out there. You left all your toys. Pick it up." And so they picked it up, and it wasn't a big deal, but I wasn't happy about it. I don't like the yard looking like that. Next night I come home, same thing. I could tell they were in for the night. Same toys are out. Went inside, and now I'm not happy because we'd already had this conversation. And I say, "Kids, are you in for the night?" "Yeah, we're in for the night." Well, I won't repeat everything I said, but I was just upset. So I'm not the kind of guy that blows up and screams and yells, but I'm the kind of guy that gets really intense, and I kind of lock on to you, and you know that you should not be messing with me in the moment. So the kids were feeling that, and they got very quiet, and I'm not sure, but back in that day, I didn't handle my anger very well, and so when we had dinner, I'm sure it was very icy. And no one was saying much. It was like, let's not mess with Dad because he's not a happy camper right now. So the next day, I'm walking down to the barn, and I'm a pretty self-reflective guy, so I'm thinking about that, and I'm going, "Remy, so let's have this little conversation inside my head about last night's anger, because I don't think that's really appropriate. I think you're way too angry for the crime. You know, the crime was toys in the yard, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, what was that, a 1 or a 2? My reaction was more like a 7 or an 8. I didn't go ballistic, you know, I wasn't a 9 or a 10, but it just wasn't appropriate. So what was that all about? And my first response, I'm sure, was, well, they should know better. You know, they should know to pick up themselves, and they should respect me. And in my little conversation, my other voice said, "Yeah, but I don't think that's it. They were just kids. They were just doing what kids do, making messes. So why was it? You know, what was the real issue, Remy, that was making you respond with so much anger?" And as I thought about that, I came up with 2 things, and they're going to look very familiar because I've been flashing them on the screen. The first loss I reflected on was, I think, what I experienced in the messy yard was a loss of respect. I perceived them, and I think it was a wrong perception, but I perceived them as disrespecting me. And because, you know, out of my own insecurity and hypersensitivity, I got mad at them for disrespecting me. Well, and they weren't disrespecting me. They were just being kids, right? But the second thing I thought about might have been even bigger. In fact, I know it was bigger, and that was the loss of control. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When I saw the toys scattered around my mobile home, I had flashbacks to driving by mobile home parks in Bloomington, Minnesota, when I grew up with my dad. And my dad, pardon me for any of you who live in mobile homes, I mean no disrespect, but I'm just telling you my experience and what my dad said. But when we drove by mobile home parks, actually it wasn't in Bloomington, it was when we went across the river to Shakopee where the poorer people lived. And we would drive by mobile home parks, my dad would talk about those people and look at their yards and look at their trash, you know, how trashy their yards are. Well, now I know, having lived in a mobile home, why the yards are trashy, because there's no room inside the house. You got to put it outside the house, right? But for those of us who don't know that, like my dad, you drive by and you just put all those people down as being like trailer trash. And so here I was coming home, and I thought, oh, Remy, you're tapping into something really deep here. The reason you got so mad at your kids wasn't about your kids. It's because you felt like you're trailer trash. And I went, oh, this is deep. This goes deep. Because I was 40 years old. I wasn't young. I was 40 years old at the time. I'd invested my entire life into that farm. 16 hours of work a day. I'd never worked that hard in my life. I had never touched a cow before we bought the farm. So this was a huge investment. Yeah, I got lots of stories, trust me. So when I saw my messy yard, you might as well have written failure across that picture. Remy, you're a failure. You're what your dad pointed out as trailer trash when you were kids. This is as good as you've gotten in 40 years. And then I obviously was able to backpedal and go, okay, I understand now. I'm not mad at my kids. You know, yeah, should they have picked up? Yeah, of course, they should have picked up. Should they have gotten my anger? No, like they got from me. So the real question here is, what is it that really ticks you off? And the things that tick you off, and they were true with me, and I'm pretty sure they're probably true with you. If you had to boil it down, you know, if I could walk with you through your day and catch you as soon as you're angry, hey, let me ask you right now, what's got you really mad? And you'd say, it's the keys, it's the car keys, it's the yard, the kids should have picked up. I go, no, 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 no. It's not the keys, it's not your kids, it's not your wife, it's not the crumbs on the table. What is it really? You would say, if you were insightful enough to slow down and think about it, you'd say, it's my loss of control. It's my loss of respect. And I think that would help you so much just to know what to really deal with. What am I really dealing with here? Is it really my wife, or is it really my insecurity? Is it really my kids, or is my fear that I've lost control of my life and I don't know how to get it back? Right? So what do? I've really opened up a bigger can of worms here. You know, how do you get control and respect back? What we typically do, yell louder and longer. If I just yell at my kids louder and longer, that'll fix it. Then they'll pick up the yard, and I never have to deal with the fact that I feel like trailer trash. I won't have to go there. I'll just get them to make it look nicer. I'll put better landscape around it, and I'll paint it, and I'll do all these things. But the truth is, Remy, you've got a problem with fearing that you've lost control of your finances, and you're always going to be trailer trash, right? So do you yell louder and longer? Well, I don't have time. It's a whole other talk to tell you what I do. But I've learned to turn to God with these two things, for both my dealing with loss of control and loss of respect. And you might go, I don't see how that helps at all. Well, let me just give you two quick answers. When I think a really good analogy for giving God control of my life is when everything's out of control, whatever it might be. It might be a relationship, it might be my job, my career, it might be my finances, all those things, slip out of control from time to time. How can I give that to God? It's kind of like when you get on an airplane. When you get on an airplane, you have no control of that airplane, right? But why are you relaxed? Why can you sit back and take a nap on that airplane and listen to music or whatever you do? Because you've trusted the control to someone who is in control, who is experienced, who does have the wisdom, the knowledge to handle that transportation. It gives you the ability to rest. And I can't think of a better analogy for how you can rest. When your life is out of control, you can give that to God and say, God, I'm not in control, but I'm so thankful that you're in control, and I'm going to sit back and rest and trust that in time, the bumps are going to smooth out and my life is going to be in a better place. And it's really the same thing with my loss of respect. If all you guys came up to me afterwards and said, that was the worst presentation I've ever seen. And I go home and my wife is like chewing me out because I haven't gotten the chores done at home. And I go to my congregation on Sunday and they go, this is the worst presentation we've ever seen, on Sunday. And so by Sunday night, I'm licking all my wounds. It's so nice to be able to go to God and say, God, no one seems to be respecting me right now. But I know that you do because you created me and you love me and you've invested yourself in me. So even though no one else right now is respecting me, I know that you do, and I'm going to rest in that. So it doesn't solve all the world's problems, but it solves a lot of them. Well, there's a whole lot more I can tell you about this stuff. I love talking about anger because no one else does. And I know that we all have it. I know we all experience it, and a lot of us just really have no clue what to do with it. So I hope this helped you guys a little bit. The book that I have up here is called Stuck. That's where I really talk a lot about it, and I talk about how to move from anger to forgiveness. So stop by and take a look at that. But I just appreciate the opportunity, Keith, for inviting me to be here.
because I want him to discuss a specific topic from his book, Stuck, that was very helpful and illustrative to me, and that's taking away the word frustration from men and getting behind that, and what is the word frustration really disguising, and how to deal and process that.
Sure. Well, I just shared in the book my own experience. When I was studying about anger, this is years ago now, but one of the psychologists that I was reading said that they had a counseling clinic where a lot of counselors worked for them. And they said they didn't let their counselors use euphemisms for the word anger. Euphemism is a different word. So whenever you're talking about anger, you had to use the word anger. And he said one of the words we wouldn't let them use was the word frustrated. And I thought, frustrated? Why wouldn't you let them use frustrated? And he kept going on. He said, because that's just another word for anger. And I thought about that. I thought, crap. Because I never use the word anger, but I'm always frustrated because I'm a pastor. And pastors don't get angry, they just get frustrated, right? But he just really busted me as far as how I was managing my anger through proper word choice by calling it frustrated. And that really got me to look and say, you know, Remy, you're an angrier guy than you think you are. You just disguised it really well.
That was huge, and when I read that and realized, you know, you can describe yourself as frustrated for years and allow it to go on and think it's okay. But once you face up to the fact I'm angry, you kind of know you have to do something about that. Frustrated is kind of like a victim, like somebody did something to me and I'm frustrated by it because I can't control it, I can't change it. But once you took that away and made me face up to the anger, then the sequencing of how to process anger and the steps that are similar to grieving in terms of first starting with denial and anger and then getting to acceptance and eventually to healing, those are profound principles that are covered in this book. Did anybody else have a question that came to mind? Yes, sir. Speak loudly.
Remy,
Yes.
you and I have something in common. We made a bad decision about our financial structure.
Yes.
And we lived with the results and we took it out on the people around us. The important point, I think, is before you make a big decision, pray and wait on the Lord and consult those people who are in the boat with you. I didn't, because I was sure I was right. And I lived with that mistake for 10 years. And when it was all said and done, I kissed my inheritance goodbye and the second mortgage on my house goodbye. Thank you very much. And now I'm retired with about that much. And I'm simply saying to all of you, when you make a bad decision, you need to repent. And repent to your wife if she's in the boat with you, if she hasn't left you. And you need to do a lot of praying. And you better find a couple of buddies to pray with you, or you will live with that anger.
I'm going to jump in on the tail end of that because I didn't thank you for that. Didn't hear a question in there, but I understand what you're saying. One of the reasons we exist with Leading with Power is that very fact about that men in leadership, it's a lonely life. It's a lonely existence. A lot of men have not been mentored, have not had good examples, for example, in their homes of demonstrating good leadership. And that's one of the reasons why we exist, is for that support for each other. So if you don't have a good friend that you can confide in, that's why we are putting the cards on the table for you to fill out. It's probably one of the most underutilized gifts that we've been given to support each other. And here's a mistake that I made for years that I encourage you not to make. Your wife doesn't want to hear about the challenges you face at work and how difficult life is and how unfairly you're treated. There's men that are in your life that you can unload on that, and we're not going to freak out about it. And we'll have empathy and sympathy where it's deserved, and we'll tell you to suck it up when it's time to suck it up. But your wives and your children need to be encouraged. They need to be nurtured. They need to be given hope. Hope is one of the keys to great leadership. You have to provide a solution. And all the parenting that I've ever seen done, for some reason teenagers almost always come into their teenage years with a concept that they're just not good enough. They just do not measure up quite enough. They're just not ever going to be able to meet your standard as parents. And I've had every kind of parent that I've observed have that happen, and I used to be involved a lot in youth group, and you'd hear from kids from great families, with great parents, but they always have this nagging element that I'm just not measuring up to somebody's standard. And so I would encourage you, rather than unload the anger and the frustration in the home, find a man that you can talk to. That's part of why we network as Leading with Power, is if you don't have that network of support, we exist here for that. Be willing to be transparent, trust somebody, and the issue of control. As you grow in life, you find out that there's very little that you're in control of except what's in here, right? So, anybody else have a question they would like to have Remy address at all? Or?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
You talked about the right use of anger and how you can use a positive response. Can you talk about
The positive use of anger.
Oh, sure. Well, anger, because it's an emotion, just like fear and sadness and anger, the three emotions, and I think God gave them to us to move us towards to do something constructive. If we're not trained, we default to do things that are destructive. But anger in general, it's the emotion that you're given to when confronted with any kind of loss or injustice. So it empowers you to see injustice and go after it and fix it. But oftentimes when we go after to fix an injustice, we go with a baseball bat. You know, we run to the fire with gasoline instead of going with a real solution. So we make because we don't know how to do it, we go and make things worse. When anger was given to us to go make things better. Does that make sense? Okay.
Remy, why don't you stay standing? I have a question from the book too. That one of the things that kind of surprised me is you make the recommendation to not forgive too quickly, which I thought was that had flashing lights on it when I read it.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times, especially in church circles, we're quick to tell people to forgive because we know that's the right answer. We need to forgive. But if you forgive too quickly, it's probably going to be a shallow forgiveness, and you probably haven't thought it through, and you probably haven't worked it through in your own heart to truly be able to let it go. And so you might do it, like I said, in a shallow way. And in truth, you'll get 6 months, a year down the road, and you'll still have this anger and resentment inside of you, but you've tricked yourself into thinking that you forgave someone because you said the words. I'd rather slow someone down and say, before you say the words, I forgive, or go talk to someone and say, I forgive you. Work it through. Think it through. Talk with a counselor. Get to a point where you truly have to let it go. And then your words are authentic.
Mark.
I thought you talked about after forgiving and re-entering relationship and like different ropes. I don't know if you can cite those, you need the book in front of you, but like from a velvet rope to something quite different in terms of re-entering relationship with somebody.
Well, I talk about boundaries in relationships, and you have to be wise in with different people how you set up boundaries. And so, Mark, if you're a friend of mine who has betrayed me in some way, and I'm going to reestablish a relationship with him, I can forgive Mark right away. Forgiveness means to give up the right to get even. I'm not going to get even with Mark, but we're going to try to reestablish a relationship. He wants to be my buddy, and I'm going, not so fast. And so the first thing I talked about was velvet ropes. Just kind of, I put out some things saying, okay, Mark, we can be friends, but let's kind of keep our distance. Mark doesn't quite get it. So I had to put up a picket fence, make it a little more obvious. Mark doesn't quite get it. So then I had to build an 8-foot concrete wall, say, Mark, don't climb the wall. And Mark climbs the wall. So then the fourth thing is you put up razor wire and the guard towers. It's like, Mark, if you come over here, we're calling the cops on this one. So yeah, there's a lot of different things I talk about is just wisdom in how to reestablish a relationship.
The reason that I was very excited and compelled about this topic for our leadership forum here is that we often sabotage our own effectiveness as leaders because of unresolved issues that we're dealing with. And we might be able to hide them for a while and cover them for a while, but eventually they come out in relationships. Sometimes they come out in marriage, and it's an innocent thing because of the lack of margin, the lack of control, the lack of respect. When men are put in that kind of insecure place, they can react in very bizarre and destructive ways. So we want you all to be effective leaders in your home, in your community, in your workplace. We want to support that. But one of the things that I have found necessary is you got to kind of be reflective about that, controlling anger, process it. It's one of the things that's most difficult to do among men is to honestly have honest conversations, even conflict. You know, it talks about iron sharpening iron, making men better. Well, there's sparks that fly when iron sharpens iron. And too often we stop short of that resolution. We want to avoid difficult topics rather than work through them. So we're about investing in courageous leadership, and part of courageous leadership is to confront those issues and process them properly. So that's why we invited Remy here today. I highly recommend that you check out one of his books. I highly recommend that you buy all of the Leading with Power apparel that you possibly can. Buy yourself Christmas presents. Go home and tell your wife, I did you a favor today. I got all my Christmas shopping done for myself. Then soften the blow by taking home a dozen roses. As I like to say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Thanks for coming.